My parents lied about their wedding in Hawaii and didn't invite me, their only daughter, saying I'd just be drunk with my poor husband, but now they can't stop staring at my husband's new Ferrari. From the moment I introduced Adam, they judged him. At first, it was subtle comments about how he wasn't the type of man they imagined for me. Over time, the disdain became harder to ignore. Adam started as a blue-collar worker when he moved to the U.S., working long hours to make a living because he couldn't use his university degree from his home country. When we got married, he worked tirelessly to support our family, especially after we had our first child. Within a few years of our marriage, he saved enough to start his own business, which, by the way, is now a big success. Unfortunately, my parents never gave him a chance or cared to get to know him. To them, he has always been the poor immigrant who wasn't good enough for their daughter. They barely visited when we lived in our old rental home. Even when we moved into our new house, they didn't bother to come by, aside from sending a generic housewarming gift. This was in stark contrast to how they celebrated my siblings' milestones, throwing grand parties for their housewarmings and other events. To this day, they still haven't visited our house. I stopped inviting them because they always had some excuse. They probably assumed that our new home, which we proudly bought for our family, is just as modest as the rental we lived in before, since it isn't in a wealthy neighborhood like my siblings' homes. Just to clarify, our house is more than enough for our small family, us two, our 2 kids, a cat, and a dog, but I guess it doesn't meet my parents' standards. They still make me feel like I settled for less, even though I didn't. For years, I tried to keep the peace for the sake of my children. I wanted them to have a relationship with their grandparents, even if it meant biting my tongue. Adam has been the more mature one in all of this, encouraging me to build bridges even when my parents made it clear we weren't welcome. The breaking point came last month. My parents had been planning their vow renewal ceremony in Hawaii for over a year. My kids were excited about the trip and I thought maybe this event could bring us closer as a family. But a few weeks before the event, my mom called to say the ceremony was being postponed due to travel issues with some family members. When I asked for the new date, she vaguely said she'd let me know when it was sorted out. I didn't think much of it at the time. My parents have always been disorganized. But a week after the original date, I saw photos of the ceremony posted by my siblings and other family members on social media. The pictures were beautiful. My parents smiling, my siblings and their families elegantly dressed, the picturesque Hawaiian backdrop, but my family and I were nowhere to be seen. I felt a surge of anger and hurt. My kids, who had been excited about the trip, had been lied to. Adam, who had always treated my parents with kindness and respect despite how they treated him, was insulted once again. And me? I felt like a fool for believing they wanted us there. I sent my parents a private message asking why we weren't invited and why they lied. They didn't even bother to open it. Days later, I started hearing from family friends that my parents were saying we missed the wedding because I was too drunk at home with my poor husband to catch the flight. They even claimed to feel sorry for my kids, saying they were missing out because of us. That was the last straw. My parents clearly thought I'd stay quiet as I always had to keep the peace. But seeing the disappointment on my kids' faces after months of excitement and hearing the lies they were spreading, it broke something in me. I had enough. I told Adam I wanted to confront them. For once, he didn't try to talk me out of it. Instead, he fully supported me. We decided we'd make our point while doing so in style. Although we don't spend extravagantly like my parents, we've allowed ourselves some luxuries. When Adam's old car, one he'd had since his first year in the U.S., broke down, we bought a new Ferrari as a gift to him, a reward for years of hard work. My parents didn't even know about it because they never cared enough to ask about our lives. So we loaded the kids into the Ferrari and drove to my parents' house. When we arrived, the look on my mom's face was priceless. She came out, pretending her usual fake smile, acting excited to see us. Meanwhile, I was boiling inside. Her hypocritical behavior made me sick. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. As soon as the kids were out of earshot, I told her we knew the ceremony hadn't been postponed and that we'd seen the photos. They were all over social media. Did they really think we were stupid enough not to notice? I demanded to know why they lied and why they told others we didn't attend because we were drunk. My dad came out trying to act like it was all a misunderstanding. He said they thought we couldn't afford the trip and didn't want to pressure us, but I called that a complete lie. I pointed to Adam's Ferrari and asked if that looked like the car of someone poor. My dad stammered while my mom tried to deflect the conversation, saying it was all a misunderstanding. But this time, I wasn't letting it slide. I told them how much their actions hurt, not just me, but my kids, who had been so excited about the trip, and Adam, who had done nothing but treat them with kindness. I reminded them we had tried for years to reconcile, only to be ignored and excluded repeatedly. Meanwhile, my kids played in the backyard. Adam stayed calm as always, but I could tell he was just as done with their excuses. Eventually, my mom resorted to her usual tactic, tears. She cried, saying it was too hard to please everyone and claimed we were misunderstanding their actions. Finally, my dad stepped in, saying they had invited us in spirit, but didn't want us to feel embarrassed if we couldn't attend. At that point, I laughed bitterly and told them to save their excuses because I didn't believe them anymore. I made it clear that until they owned up to their behavior and apologized, there was no way to repair the relationship. I wouldn't allow my kids to be around them. I wouldn't risk them being influenced by my parents' classist and racist attitudes. After we left, my siblings started messaging me. Furious that I had shown off Adam's Ferrari and embarrassed our parents, they accused me of making a scene and disrespecting the family. Those siblings were never on my side anyway. I won't let my parents or anyone else disrespect my husband and kids ever again. Does that make me the bad guy? Fine, so be it. Update 1. It's been a few weeks since my last post here. First, I want to thank everyone who offered advice and support on my previous post. Many of you pointed out that taking my kids to confront my parents wasn't the best decision. I've thought about it a lot, and I completely agree. I was so caught up in my anger and frustration that I didn't stop to consider the potential impact on them. I deeply regret that decision. While I don't regret standing up for myself and my family, I've promised myself to protect my kids from any future drama. They deserve better. It's been a few weeks since the confrontation, but the repercussions haven't stopped. My siblings have been set on making me feel guilty, so I'll apologize to our parents. My brother recently called to scold me for ruining mom and dad's image and said they'd always acted with my best interests at heart. He accused me of showing off the car just to embarrass them. My sister, with whom I used to have a close relationship, sent me a long message defending our parents. She claimed they didn't exclude me maliciously and just wanted to spare me the stress of attending an expensive trip. She said, I overreacted and that I've always been too confrontational, which according to her, is why I cause problems. Hearing those things hurt, but it wasn't all that surprising. I've always been the confrontational one in the family, the difficult daughter. While my siblings followed the rules and stayed on good terms with my parents, I questioned things. I didn't blindly accept what they said, and that often made me the black sheep. As a result, I've always been the least favored. But my parents have always said and done the wrong things, so it's not bad to stand up to them every once in a while. Even when I try to keep the peace, I've always been honest with them. Now, with my mom's birthday approaching, I'm stuck in a new dilemma. My kids have been asking what we're going to get Grandma for her birthday. They don't fully understand what's happened and, despite everything, they still adore her. It breaks my heart to see their excitement and know they're caught in the middle of this family drama. A part of me feels I should just let it go for their sake. I could send a gift and try to keep the peace even if only to preserve their relationship with my parents. But another part of me thinks it's unhealthy for them to spend time with their grandparents. My parents are obsessed with status, appearances, and wealth, values I don't want my kids to absorb. I've seen how their toxic mindset has affected me over the years, always trying to prove something and feeling like I was never enough. I don't want my kids to grow up with the same insecurities or think that love depends on meeting someone else's arbitrary expectations. At the same time, I don't want to cut off the relationship entirely if it means disappointing my kids, who still see their grandparents with innocent eyes. Adam has always been incredibly supportive. He suggested we let the kids make handmade cards for Grandma and pick out small, thoughtful gifts. He thinks it's a way to acknowledge the birthday without compromising our values or reopening old wounds. It's a great idea, but even that feels complicated to me. What if doing this only sends the message that I'm willing to let things slide again? I have my doubts about this. My heart tells me to protect my kids and stand firm against my parents' toxicity, but my mind worries about how losing that connection entirely might affect my kids. I feel like I'm walking a tightrope, trying to balance what's best for them with what's best for me. For now, I haven't decided what to do. The birthday is coming up fast, and I know I'll have to make a decision soon. I just hope that whatever choice I make, it's the right one for my kids and me. Update 2. After weeks of internal debate, I finally gave in and sent my mom a birthday gift. I didn't do it for her. I did it for my kids. They were so excited to do something for Grandma, and I didn't want to crush their enthusiasm. They picked out a simple necklace with a charm that said Grandma and made a handmade card. I mailed everything along with a brief note explaining it was from the kids and nothing more. I thought that would be the end of it. I wasn't opening the door to closer contact or reconciliation. I was just trying to protect my kids' feelings. But, of course, my parents couldn't leave it at that. A few days after the gift was delivered, I was at work when they showed up unannounced. My office is in a secure building, but they waited outside and approached me when I went out for lunch. They said they needed to talk and started by saying how much the gift meant to my mom. But instead of expressing gratitude, they immediately turned it into a lecture. They talked about how we should put everything behind us and stick together because they really love me. My dad even mentioned the confrontation at their house, saying I embarrassed them and made the family look bad. I tried to stay calm, but it was difficult. I reminded them that the gift wasn't an olive branch. It was from their grandchildren, not me. I told them their behavior had already caused enough damage and that I wasn't interested in fixing things. That's when my mom had the audacity to say I was being cruel by keeping the kids away from them and that I should stop punishing them. Well, that was it for me. I told them they'd made their choices time and time again, and choices have consequences. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was protecting my family. I asked them how they could expect forgiveness when they'd never shown real remorse or taken responsibility for their actions. They just stared at me as if they couldn't believe I wasn't backing down like I used to. The confrontation ended when I walked away. I told them not to show up at my workplace again or try to contact me directly. I reminded them the only reason I sent the gift was for the kids' sake and that it didn't mean I was willing to forgive or forget what they'd done. Now that I've had time to calm down, I'm angrier than ever. They still don't get it. They don't understand, or maybe they just don't care. They lie, manipulate, and paint themselves as victims, and yet they still expect me to go out of my way to keep the peace. Well, no more. I don't want revenge. I'm not that kind of person, but I do want them to face real consequences, to feel what it's like to be on the other side of the pain and frustration they've caused. Maybe that's petty or vindictive, but I don't care. They've spent years treating me and Adam like we're less, and I won't let them get away with it anymore. I'm still figuring out exactly what that looks like. Maybe it's about being honest with the extended family about everything that has happened. Maybe it's about cutting off contact completely and letting them explain to everyone why their grandchildren don't know them. Whatever it is, I'm not going to keep playing the role of the good person anymore. They can learn to live with the consequences of their actions or face the truth they've been avoiding for far too long. For once in my life, I'm putting my family and myself first. And if my parents can't handle that, that's their problem, not mine. Update 3. I've been so busy that I almost forgot to post here again. So, here's what happened. A few days ago, I received an anonymous message online. Someone told me that my parents only pretend to have money, but in reality, they're drowning in debt. At first, I dismissed it as some strange joke or a bitter relative trying to stir up drama. My parents, for all their faults, always seemed wealthy or at least gave off that impression. They've always had good income, so the message didn't make much sense. But the sender included proof, photos of property listings showing multiple homes my parents were selling, and several foreclosure notices. My parents, who were always so proud and obsessed with appearances, and who looked down on others who didn't meet their standards, were secretly struggling to maintain the image they had built. Curiosity got the best of me, so I did some digging. Turns out, the information was true. Their financial situation is much worse than I could have imagined. After retiring early, they relied entirely on their investments and savings to fund their lifestyle. But living beyond your means for years eventually catches up with you. Market changes and their refusal to cut back on expenses led to massive losses, and now they're drowning in debt. They've already sold several properties just to stay afloat. Their extravagant vacations and parties have been scaled back significantly. Even some of their social circles have started noticing, which probably explains how the anonymous tipper found out. Apparently, the conflict between my parents and me has spread to the extended family and even some old acquaintances. My parents have made many enemies over the years with their attitudes. It seems someone decided to air their dirty laundry out of spite. At first, I wasn't sure how to feel. A part of me felt bad for them. Despite everything, it's sad to see how far they've fallen. But another part of me couldn't ignore the irony. These are the same people who excluded me and my family, called Adam poor, and made up lies to justify their behavior. Now, they're the ones struggling financially while Adam and I are doing well. After reflecting on the information for a few days, I decided to take action, not exactly to get revenge, but to expose the truth. My parents thrive when their image is intact. They've spent their lives trying to appear perfect, wealthy, and untouchable. Their lies and manipulation have hurt me, my husband, and even my children. If they want to play dirty, I can show them how it feels when the truth is used against them. Using a fake account, I anonymously posted the evidence I received directly on social media and tagged my parents. I didn't add commentary or make accusations, just share the images of the property listings and foreclosure notices. It was all public, verifiable information, so I wasn't doing anything illegal. Within minutes, the post started gaining traction. Comments started pouring in from their friends and acquaintances asking what was going on. Some were shocked. Some expressed sympathy for my parents, but many were clearly enjoying the downfall, as they had always acted like they were better than everyone else. I'm not sure what will happen now, but hopefully, my parents might finally understand what it feels like to have the truth used against them. For the first time, I feel like I've regained some power. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. My parents have spent their lives dodging consequences, and now they're facing them head-on. Update 4. It's been a few months since my last post. The fallout from my parents' financial troubles has been even more dramatic than I could have anticipated. The revelation of their debts spread quickly, thanks in part to my social media post and the gossip within their social circles. Now it seems like everyone knows about their struggles. Their former friends, the same people who flock to their extravagant parties, have distanced themselves. My parents are no longer the wealthy, untouchable figures they pretended to be. Now, they're facing the harsh reality of their actions. What surprised me most was how my siblings reacted. These are the same people who defended my parents for years, telling me to apologize and be the bigger person. But now, with my parents' reputation in ruins and their financial situation exposed, my siblings have completely distanced themselves. With their issues now public knowledge, my siblings refuse to offer any kind of help, financial or otherwise. They were the perfect children. The ones who stood by my parents, but only when they thought they had money and social status. As soon as that was gone, they were the first rats to abandon ship. I'd say I'm surprised, but I'd be lying. Desperate, my parents turned to me. They tried to play the victims, saying they were misunderstood and that they always did their best for me. They even tried to guilt me, mentioning their age and how hard it is for them to re-enter the workforce. But I reminded them that they had years to make amends with me and my family. Yet they chose to exclude us, belittle my husband, and alienate my children. I told them I wouldn't help them, not financially or in any other way. Now my parents will have to find an income source and continue selling off their possessions if they want to stay afloat. Apparently, even my siblings, who I've since learned, were the ones who paid for the Hawaii trip, want nothing to do with them anymore. It's almost funny unless you're my parents that they're going through all of this, but they've worked hard to earn it by being awful to everyone. Meanwhile, my life continues to thrive. Adam and I are doing great, and our kids are happy and healthy. We started planning a vacation to treat ourselves, and I've continued my admittedly petty habit of sending my parents postcards. Each one is a subtle reminder of the life they'll never be a part of, all thanks to their own choices. Some might see it as excessive, but after years of enduring their cruelty, it feels like justice to me. This entire ordeal has taught me a lot about family, accountability, and self-respect. My parents always thought they were untouchable, that their money and image would shield them from consequences. Now they're learning the hard way that actions have consequences, and no amount of manipulation can change that. I won't let their toxicity drag me down for even one more second. They made their bed, and now they have to lie in it. Edit. I'm not sure why I can't create another post. Every time I try to hit the publish button, an error message pops up. So I'll add what's happened lately here instead. I hope you all can see it. In recent months, my parents have sold off almost all their properties, including a vacation home I loved because we used it when I was a child. It wasn't one of their most luxurious homes as they bought it many years ago, but I have fond memories of that place. That's why Adam and I decided to buy it, and we've already taken a trip there with the kids to spend time together. We didn't pay more than necessary, just the market price. My father even tried to ask my husband for a job, arguing that with his experience, he could be useful to his company. But his entitled attitude didn't stop there. He also said he'd settle for a share in the company and a salary, which was completely ridiculous. Of course, my husband worked hard to build his business from scratch, and my father expected to get a piece overnight. My husband responded that he didn't think it would work. I know he said it to be polite in the face of such a ridiculous request, but when my father insisted again, I was the one who replied, telling him that the company was thriving and we didn't need someone who could sink it like he had done with his own life. Even so, my father has found a job. But judging by what he seems to be earning, he's now much closer to belonging to the middle class he despised so much than to the lifestyle he was accustomed to. Maybe that's given him a lesson in humility. Because while my husband started from nothing, that hunger to succeed is what got him where he is now. And I'm so proud of him.